I don't know if Richland is still on. If you're on, Ray Corey, we're not seeing you right now, so if you're on,
Yes.
please let me hear from you.
I'm here.
Oh, very good. We're at the back end of what I believe to be a very successful and productive workshop. I believe we were solely focused on work planning and control execution from many angles with different stakeholders. I think it's been very successful. We're at the wrap-up point. I don't know if you have any reflections, Ray. I'm sure you do. I want to speak quickly, and then I'll go to you. I believe that on the part of the workshop organizers, that Ray and I and with others have a couple of actions that we need to take care of. One is that we will issue final proceedings of the workshop that would include, bios and final agenda and presentations and other material. With a reasonable period of time, we need to work with the people here in terms of getting information from them on the videos and so forth. And that we also would include in there sort of highlights, summaries, coming out of the meeting. I also heard an action from or requests for clarification from Joe Yannick and some others that they wanted to understand a little bit better how the different tasks fit together, and so we would develop a brief document that would overlay the November 30th letter from the Deputy Secretary that would talk about those actions and how they're tied together, and also provide some status in terms of where we are with those actions. I don't believe that there were other actions for us. It was a major action to put on the workshop to provide the forum for sharing lessons learned. I think that I heard a lot of suggestions and recommendations and good information for people at the sites or in the programs that are working on their processes at different levels, that there are things that shared here that may shape or influence where you are on those topics. There's some things that probably some of us need to think about with regard to our other responsibilities about the need for leading indicators. Are we hearing something in people that work in that area could share ones that they have, and individuals that need to work more on ones for their sites or programs. Maybe there's some insights from this meeting and that will be helpful in terms of doing that. Ray, I don't know if you heard other actions for for us or other comments for the programs or the sites from you.
I did hear, I think you covered a little bit, but the idea of maybe some sort of a project schedule on the actions number 2 to have people have some idea of when they could see pieces of this, when it's going to get in the RevCom, those type of things. I think you were alluding to that. I think the other action that specific to this workshop that I mentioned is I think you and I need to work with FCOG to make sure that products that they're coming up with and endorsing, that we in DOE make a more timely formal decisions about our endorsement of those products. I think that's a lesson learned from the board's feedback to us. Those are the two I thought of. John, did you have anything else that you recalled?
Not from an action standpoint.
Okay. I think the other thing, we'll get to this, I'm sure, Pat, is kind of the bigger picture on the whole ISM champions effort and the overall workshop. So I'll leave that for the next part of this discussion.
In terms of this particular workshop, the thinking, back in the October timeframe when we were working on responding to the Defense Board, was that we would convene a special workshop to share lessons learned. And I don't know if I heard anything, even though we didn't ask that question, actually during the course of the 2 days, do we need a part two of the workshop, or do we need to just reflect on kind of what we've learned, what we've shared here, and at some other point we could bring that up. I'm still hopeful that Los Alamos will be able to host a full-scale ISM workshop in the 2014 timeframe, but with all of the problems about conference management and so forth, I'm not sure where we stand with that, if we'll be able to get the approval, but it certainly is something that we're hopeful. If we knew for sure that we had something like that, then that certainly could be a track at a full-fledged workshop, but it's too early at this point to know if we're going to be able to do that. And so actually,
I'd also be, sorry, Pat.
Go on.
I think I'd also be interested in feedback on this forum. Obviously, this is a new way of trying to conduct these workshops, at least within the ISM framework, as opposed to a very large face-to-face using the televideo. Obviously, there's some glitches at the beginning, but aside from that, I think if you could give us feedback to Pat and I on how well you thought this worked, whether this could be a forum for continued, use of that. Also, focusing on special topics as opposed to the larger ISM as another idea. It keeps the numbers down a little bit in terms of being more focused. So, if you could give any thoughts to Pat and I about how we go forward. We have been working with Los Alamos, as Pat mentioned, to see if they could host it, but given the conference management rules, it's been difficult. And of course, now with sequestration, the travel budgets is the other piece that's factored into this as well. So, but certainly thoughts on how well this is working, whether this is valuable for the field, I'd be interested in.
In terms of ISM workshops, future workshops, and feedback, that we hope you send us emails in terms of what you think, as Ray was saying about using this methodology or this approach. But we only test the waters with a single focus, topic, and not so there's no. My guess is that we're a long ways off from being able to do anything other than a special workshop through these means, because there are a lot of challenges of hooking people up, and and even here in Forrestal, when we decided that we'll try to host a special workshop here, we thought we could have both this auditorium and the small auditorium for some other meetings. We don't have the capability in the small auditorium to do the video conferencing or anything like that. So it's difficult to do more than one thing in this forum using this process to do it. If it's acceptable to the group, if we would take a few more minutes and kind of talk about some themes. I think there were some emerging themes here over the last 2 days. And it was interesting coming from different programs, different sites, or different positions within your organization, that there seemed to be themes that were coming up constantly. And one in particular was, the first line supervisors, that if we want to work on this problem, if we want to improve in this area, that we need to, deal with first line supervisors. It needs to be a big part of the process. And that mentoring was important, that mentoring people, you don't kind of, wake up one day and you know how to, to do it. There are people that have experience, from different angles, and they can work together in a mentoring process to get us the kind of individuals that we might need in work planning and control. Those were things, and again, this idea of leading indicators, can you tell me something before it happens? I mean, those were things that seem to come across, quite a bit. I think that, while Jim McConnell talked about execution, I think once he said it, and if we looked in the different programs, I think that different things that people said and presented, I think that we're on the same page with Jim, that it's all about execution. We can plan forever, but the bottom line with activity level work planning and control is when you actually execute, those plans and processes and things like that. So staying focused on execution. I thought it was an interesting comment from USW, from Tom, when he mentioned today that activity level, you got to deal with it at other levels if you want to be able to really impact change there. And yesterday when I was, we were waiting for the Acting Secretary Poneman to come in, we were talking about a number of things, and I tried to make a point, during that time that we're talking about work planning and control. I'll put execution in, even though I didn't say it yesterday. Work planning and control execution at all levels, and we want to be able to discuss ways to impact improving that at the activity level. And it's similar, even though he was focused on work involvement. It's never one level. I mean, if you could never do activity with work planning and control if you didn't have higher level things that were already established. And now you're taking those processes and you're flowing them down to the activity level to see if they really are effective when you want to actually do work. So I think probably all of us, realize that in improving and looking at activity level work planning and control, that we are again looking at those other processes and are they appropriate to be able to flow down and get the things that we want done. There were a lot of themes, I think, that we were hearing that were reoccurring, through the course of 2 days, and I would be interested to hear from you, Ray, and from others if there are other themes that you thought were coming across in the different presentations.
Yeah, one thought, as we've been rolling out the safety conscious work environment training from the 2011-1, we've hit the senior management team. I know the department's working on the next level down, first line supervisor and the worker training for that. And I think that's a real opportunity to really hit on a number of these themes as well. So we should think about that. I think the involvement of workers in work planning control, I do agree sometimes we don't talk about that enough. It's absolutely crucial that workers understand the risks, understand the hazards, and are part of that process. I know we put those words into our documents and policies, but sometimes we don't emphasize that enough in our discussions. I had two takeaways. There weren't so much themes, but one I really liked was the quote that Matt Mowry had to attribute to Frank McCoy, which was, "There's no such thing as routine work." I thought that was very important to keep in mind. And I also like Jim McConnell's discussion on the Delta W, that work that is performed is different than work imagined. I think that's another huge challenge in this process, that there were very good concepts to keep in mind as we move forward.
No one's at the mic. I can't see with the light mine's here, but
It's Roger Claycomb.
hey, okay, Roger.
I just wanted to reemphasize a good point was brought up in a couple of presentations regarding lessons learned. We always talk lessons learned. Well, more often than not, what we end up with is lessons provided that get put on a shelf or put in a database, and that's the last you see of them. What happens on the other end is what's really critical about that. Does it result in a change in the model work order that opens the valve that was left closed that caused the event the last time? And the other piece is we talked about how important that first line supervisor is. And I just wanted to clarify that when I talked about that, I wasn't trying to throw the first line supervisor under the bus. I was trying to emphasize how critical their role is in work execution. We place a tremendous burden on the first line supervisors. Every time something goes wrong, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get one of the fixes is, well, we'll make that the first line supervisor's responsibility. He's just one guy. You have to remember what you burdened him with and don't overburden him. So, thank you.
You made a couple of points, if I could just reflect on them a little bit. I think one came from USW when you were talking about lessons. He was talking about lessons learned, that it's only when they're applied or they learned. I thought that was a good quote to take back. And when you say that we put a lot of responsibility on the first line supervisors, I agree that we do. And so we need, certainly ways to mentor and to help them to be able to do the job, because first line supervisors have a lot of influence, and so they're very important because they shape the culture and other things. So we really want to work with them. We heard from Donna and some others about, and I think Brad and others, about sort of this thin line about how much do you put in a work package, what is it you're going to give the worker when they're going to go out and actually do the work. And I think that as you're tweaking your work planning and control processes and your roadmaps to execution, that you are always juggling that and looking at that is that how much do you want to put in there? You don't want to go to the point that it's no longer effective because they're overloaded. I think that thing kind of came across from a number of presentations. So. Any other parting thoughts? And I hope that I mean personally, I'm very happy with the workshop results. I think we brought together the right people with the right experience and willingness to share and so forth. I think it was really really good. I think the assisted visits, I hope that they can continue because, as I said in my previous life, when you get out in the field, you learn as much as you share or more. And I hope that the concerns we have with resources, don't hinder us from being able to continue with those. I think from everything I heard about them, they certainly add a lot of value and worth every dollar that was used for it. Jim?
This is Jim Winter, and talking about themes from the workshop, and I think it's one of the themes that I took away was the benchmarking and the assurance of work planning control systems that are many presentations represented that in different ways. I think if we look at the URS presentation and what Frank McCoy and Rick Reynolds and who's that other guy? Bob McQuinn, sorry about that, did for really representing on a very large scale how they benchmarked their programs against, developing a standard and then going out and systematically assessing and understanding where they were in implementation space and obviously still doing that. And I think that in many respects is what every organization is talking about in presentations, and really what we need to be most focused on. How do we get that model in place, across our complex, and how do we use that in seeking excellence in this area? But I do appreciate all the presentations that came across representing that.
Certainly a strong CAS is the way that we want to continue to go in the future. And so I was also pleased to hear a number of presentations that at some point they got to the contract assurance system. I thought it was very good.
Yep, and certainly sites are choosing various benchmarks, whether they be the FCOG guideline document, whether they be things that they are working at their own sites, or as I said before, utilizing the URS standard. All very valuable activities.
And then I would just like to reiterate, just as like with our safety culture, the grassroots was so important years ago when and still is very important in regards to safety. I think we have an opportunity here too with work planning and control at a grassroots level. And so again, on behalf of the FCOG work management team, if your laboratory is not represented, please contact us on our webpage. We'd love to invite as many people as we can to get involved in this. We do need help with the project plan that we're working with DOE on, and the assist visits. So just one more plug that if anybody'd like to get involved, we'd love to have you.
Is Brookhaven still here? I know that some months, maybe 2, 3, 4 months ago, we talked about some changes you had made in work planning and control and how you were, I believe, consolidating some of the activities in a centralized location. Do you mind spending a couple of minutes just sharing that? I thought it was an interesting change. Is it?
I don't have the details.
Okay, but maybe in a future work planning and control activity, we'll talk with you about it and maybe hear more about sort of how you sort of assigning work for maintenance in some other areas. So that might be good. So we know we have at least one signed up for our next time around. Are there any other topics from you, Ray?
Well, I did want to acknowledge two former feds and retirees that I think are in the audience that were huge leaders in the department in putting ISM in place and helping institutionalize it. I was really pleased to see Aldean Gouveldou, who of course was Pat's right-hand man for many years and was a true leader in ISM. And it looks like Frank Russo's in the back of the room there. And as we all know, Frank was the ISM co-champion with Pat for many years and the senior safety advisor in NNSA. So it's nice to see them there, and I'd like to thank them for all the years of hard work they put into improving ISM for the department.
I want to echo that. It certainly was like walking among giants for a couple of days. People that had been involved and shaped where we are in integrated safety management. So I want to thank them for coming back as well. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other parting remarks? But we didn't issue a formal survey or anything like that. We should have done that. We will send out a note to all of the people that were registered here, just asking them, reminding you to give us some feedback on the forum and on the approach as well as the content of the special workshop.
Hey, Pat, this is John.
Yes, John?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I had a comment, something maybe for follow-up. Maybe there's a good path forward on this, but in terms of taking our FCOG products that we come up with and then translating those into, if they need to be translated into DOE documents, how does that process work? To me, is still something that I'm not real comfortable with. I think we evolved a little bit with the safety culture products, into the DOE guide. Now we're kind of evolving this FCOG guide into some DOE documents, but I think there could be a little more done there to firm up how exactly that process works.
In terms of taking documents or processes that have been developed by FCOG and putting them into the DOE system, what we've done to date, starting with safety culture and some other things, they were done on a case-by-case basis in terms of this is what we have, how do you think we should go forward? I don't know if we're in a position as a department to say that this is the process that we're going to use. I think we do want to make a commitment to be more timely in making a decision about how do we want to move this forward in the DOE process. But I don't think we can be so rigid now and say it's going to be, because what we're doing with a lot of the information that Jim's working on in terms of the implementation handbook for contractors, that's a tech standard, and some of the information that we're talking about that Brad is working on and that Don Rack and Roger are things that would likely become part of a guide and would be in that system. So again, I don't know if we can say that this is the process, but I think that products coming out of FCOG, we always need to give them serious consideration and again, a commitment on DOE's part to be more timely in making a decision about what path we would use and how to go forward. Okay. It's your opportunity to tell us in person or send an email. Let me offer my thanks to all of you for participating and staying with us through the kind of rough periods over the last 2 days. I think it was certainly rewarding, and I want to thank you again. And being a headquarters person, I want to always extend my special thanks to Ray and his folks in the field, because we need to be anchored sometime with the field when we're here in the headquarters and get feedback and working and support from the field. So I thank you, Ray. And unless you have some other questions for me, we will close the special workshop. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.